magic must be your last resort. It has rules, it has limitations. Before you cast a spell, you must learn the ancient language of the elves.
Brisinga.
Brisinga means fire, is fire. The thing is the word. Know the word, and you control the thing. Before you can cast a spell, you must have the physical strength to withstand its effect. Some spells, they leave you weakened. Other spells, as you found out on the bridge, can leave you unconscious. And yet other spells, if you use them before you're ready, will kill you. I can teach you the words, but the limit of your strength, you must learn for yourself.
Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong. All right. I'm Reese. To my left is
David.
To my further left,
Irina.
off in a distant land,
AJ.
And unfortunately, Noah will not be here for this episode. He is busy with other obligations. But in his place, we have a good friend.
Noah. No, I'm sorry. It's Nick.
The one time we don't have Noah here and we have someone pretending to be Noah.
Yeah, it's our first, kind of guest episode here. And actually, you've heard him before if you've heard our Ocean's 13 episode. He had a 3-minute clip, and he was pretty upset with
Letting us know.
Honestly, rightfully upset about our Ocean's 11
Yeah.
episode. That's one of the few ones that we look back on as like maybe a movie that we need to revisit and re-talk about, because I think some of our opinions changed over time as that series progressed, and we got to, especially me, once we got to Ocean's 13 and Ocean's 8, I was, starting to feel like I had maybe done Ocean's 11 dirty. But I've said that plenty of episodes.
We did it dirty.
And luckily by now, I think I've pretty much gotten over the hard feelings. Just let's not bring it up for the rest of the episode.
Yeah. Okay, you get flashbacks.
We need to focus all our attention on Eragon.
Not Eragon.
Wait, what? Is that the movie we're talking about?
I think so. Did anyone watch anything different?
You said Eragon?
Ah.
Because I watched The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
We've already covered that.
Are you
Did
kidding?
we really?
Does it come full circle now?
Wow.
I-
You have to remind me. What happened in that episode? I don't remember.
So there were some Yetis, some football. It's a movie that I'd put on about the level of the one that we're talking
Okay.
about today. So there
No.
is some relation there. What?
I
What,
don't know.
David?
I don't know. I think that I wouldn't put this at a 7, okay?
Out of 7.
7 out of 7.
Perfect score.
I think that Tomb of the Dragon Emperor is a masterpiece that it shouldn't even fall into the same chamber as Eragon.
As long as it has dragons.
Yes.
If Brendan Fraser was in this movie, this might make a 7.
Anyway, of course, we're talking about Eragon, a movie that came out in 2006. It's directed by Stephen Fangmere. I'm assuming that's how you say his name. He has previously, or before this movie, not directed a movie. He's been a VFX supervisor on a lot of well-known films, and a second unit director for 2 films, Dreamcatcher, the 2003 Stephen King adaptation, and Galaxy Quest, of all things.
What did he do after this?
I don't know. that's the
More
furthest-
VFX.
More VFX?
More VFX,
Wait,
yeah.
he didn't do a movie after this?
No, this was his only directorial credit.
So someone was like, all right, we're going to give you a chance. You really want to direct? We're going to give you this blockbuster movie based off this really popular book.
All the kids are into Eragon right now.
Everybody's in it. We got the most famous actors for it. And then nothing.
There have been successful, transitions from VFX to actual directing. I mean, you have the John Wick films. That was actually stunt coordinators who ended up making the John Wick films.
That's
and
really
Deadpool
Does
2.
not surprise me.
And you would have thought such a VFX-heavy production like this would have really benefited from his, directorial seat. But
Yeah.
we'll find out how that happens.
But they didn't learn their lesson after this, because you actually have other directors past Eragon who have directed fantasy features that were VFX directors. Yeah, Snow White and the Huntsman. He was I want to say he was a VFX director, and he had done commercials or something like that.
I was going to say that's what he did. He didn't do too much work like this guy did.
Yeah,
though.
and Joseph Kosinski, who directed Tron Legacy, Oblivion, and the upcoming Top Gun Maverick, I think he was also a VFX director as well. Not positive, but I think if my memory serves me correctly, he was.
That's not going to be the last time we talk about Tron Legacy in this episode, I think.
Is it?
Yeah, we have an actor.
Oh, true.
Yeah,
That is true.
Yeah, an actor that
I-
can connect.
Not
them.
expecting to see that guy, by the way, in this movie.
I
but
know.
okay.
With like stringy, weird hair.
Yeah. That looks very fake.
Yep.
Anyway, this movie stars Ed Spaliers, Jeremy Irons, Sienna Gilroy, Robert Carlyle, Irina, you know
Yay,
him,
Robert Carlyle. I like him.
Jimon Hansu, Garrett Hedlund, Joss Stone, Rachel Weisz, and John Malkovich, Nick's favorite.
Why?
Do you like John Malkovich?
I literally don't know where that came from.
You
Well,
watched
I-
being John Malkovich.
I remember a while back you talking about this movie, and we were talking about how over the top his performance was and how much you
Dude.
hated it. Maybe you'd forgot that, but
I might have mixed that up with how much I love Jeremy Irons, but
I think we could all mix that up.
yeah. And the
well, you're
movie's
being facetious.
Yes.
so the movie's written by Peter Buckman. Although in a little conversation we had previously to this movie, there's apparently something more to that.
Yeah, apparently there was like several writers were arguing about who got the most credit, or there weren't enough, and for some reason the Writers Guild has a certain rule about you have to write a certain amount to get your name up there. So there were like 5 names on the poster. There were several posters with different writers' names.
Really?
That's so weird.
In the end, they just went with one.
Like, scratch all those other guys.
And I bet he's really happy with the solo credit on that.
I was
Oh,
thinking
yeah,
about that,
gosh.
where, a lot of them were really upset at the time, but then when they saw the reaction to the movie, like, oh, I'm glad my name wasn't on that one.
Yeah.
By the way, you know Peter Buckman's prior work to this, right?
No, I don't.
What is
The
it?
amazing script for Jurassic Park 3.
Oh, really?
Hey, I kind of enjoy Jurassic Park 3. Is that bad?
I mean, I
It's
enjoy it too,
totally
but just
fine.
on the plane.
No, the Alan scene is the worst. No, that needs to be cut out for sure.
Wake up, Ellen.
Yeah, I don't know whose idea that was. Peter Buckman.
We're blaming you.
Sorry, buddy.
The movie Eragon, that is based on the book of the same name by Christopher Paolini, who has written 4 books in this series that he started when I want to say he was like 15.
I think it was
right?
17 when it was published.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was young.
Something
He was
crazy.
really
That's
young.
insane. I never would have said this, but I think if he had written the script, it might have been better.
You know, he's
Yeah.
talked about it recently. He says if they were ever going to do another one, he would want to produce and write it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of looked like a 17-year-old produced this movie.
Anyway, on this podcast, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So you guys, had y'all seen Eragon before this episode? I'm going to go with Irina.
Yes, I did. I think I watched it in theaters. And, gosh, how old was I when this came out? It was,
2006, so
yeah, not that old. I think I was like a preteen or something. But I remember watching it and even then not enjoying it. And I hadn't read the books before. So I just was very confused, I think, about what I was supposed to feel here.
Yep.
And I didn't really plan on watching it again.
and yet here you are.
Yes, I am here.
How about you, David?
No, I hadn't seen this movie, but I definitely recognize the cover of the movie. I saw it around. I must have been one of the biggest target audiences back in 2006 because it was everywhere. Maybe everyone was reading it too. Maybe that's why I remember
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I don't know how I never ended up seeing it, but yeah, it was new for me.
AJ.
Yes, I had seen Eragon. I did read the books, The Inheritance Cycle, multiple times. So I was really looking forward to the movie. And apparently I watched it with somebody else, Nick here, in the theaters. And I guess I repressed those memories.
Yeah, and me
the
apparently.
movie
So
or-
yeah, you really repressed
Yeah.
them.
And then I distinctly remember watching it also at home, maybe hoping that I watched the wrong movie before. Yeah, it's quite different from the books.
Yeah, I do want to. Okay, actually, I'm going to ask this question after I shoot it over to you, Nick. So you, Nick.
Thanks for running those two together right there.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's what I'm here for. But had you seen this movie before, Nick?
Yeah, so as you both know, when I was growing up, this was my around my birthday, that I would always get Lord of the Rings around this time of year. And then after that, I got King Kong. And then we just had the next big fantasy movie coming up, Eragon. And I remember reading the book.
boy.
Everyone in middle school had read this, and it has such a great cover. And I saw the first poster. I was checking the website every day, and we all go to see it for that big birthday party that year. And like AJ said, I came home and was not as excited as I could have been coming out of that movie.
You had so many blockbusters.
Yeah,
too.
think about that. You had Lord of the Rings and then King Kong, and this.
And some, the Harry Potter
would
movies
diminish
always, and the Narnia movies, they were
Yeah.
always like the
Scattered in there.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this is the first time I had any kind of idea of what disappointment was
that. Yeah.
Yep.
in my life.
You had
This-
so much fantasy, like perfect, or not perfect.
You
You
were
had really good
indulged.
fantasy.
I was really spoiled for a long time.
And then this came out.
I thought Lord of the Rings was your typical movie, and then I saw this and I realized,
Yeah.
oh, it can
Oh,
be bad.
it's not
So-
typical.
So I wanted to ask both you and AJ, y'all had seen the trailers for this. Being readers of the book, did the trailers not spell trouble for you when you saw them, or did it look like, oh, this looks like it's going to be a faithful adaptation, and I'm excited?
They did have some warning signs. Now, this was me being a teenager, really into books, and at that time, you know, if it wasn't a direct copy and paste adaptation from the book to the screen, then I took issue with it. For example, like the Gedwe Ignazi, which is the scar on his hand from when he first touches Saphir, they decided to make it shaped like a lowercase e and a dragon just for kicks, I guess. And it's like, that's not how it was in the book. But I guess, you know, I still wanted to see it. And, you know, Saphir the dragon did look impressive. And you always want to see, like we talked about with the Lord of the Rings, especially the books that you had read, be successful, you know, visually. So I still went into it, you know, having high hopes.
Yeah.
They were, you know, shortly dashed thereafter, but
Yeah, I remember this was the time when I remember Return of the King trailers had super psyched me up. I was all about checking trailers regularly. Was this around the time? This was after Star Wars prequels had already come out.
Oh,
yeah.
Or around
So,
the time.
The third, Revenge of the Sith was 2005, I think. So yeah, they had just wrapped up.
Yeah, I was one of those kids that had iTunes/trailers as like a bookmark on my browser, and I was checking regularly to see if there was ever a new trailer. And I do remember John Malkovich was not exactly who I thought Galbatorix was. In
yeah.
fact, I don't think you even see Galbatorix in the first book at
Right.
all. So
Yeah.
the fact that he was in it at all was a little concerning when I was a kid. But I was like, oh, cool, we get to see Galbatorix.
Yeah.
I can see this. You know, I've seen John Malkovich in some modern day movies. Maybe he'll be a good actor in this. But I do remember Jeremy Irons was not who I thought Brom would be when I read it. But when I saw him on the trailer, I was like, I could see this. This is a really cool Brom, and he's got the biting wit, and I feel like he could pull off the physicality of some of it. Ed Spielers was not what I thought of Eragon looking like, but I was willing to give it a try.
Right.
And
You were open-minded about it.
yeah, I was very, very hopeful. I was very, very excited. The only warning sign was John Malkovich, and it wasn't enough to make me not want to go see the movie. So-
Right.
Yeah.
I think we're all on a very similar mindset on
Yeah.
this.
Even though I
So-
haven't read the books, it's almost like I could feel the same things that went wrong.
Yeah.
So
And before, sorry, did I cut
no,
you
no,
off?
no. That was
Okay,
it.
sorry.
Yeah.
And before we go into it, I had also seen this movie. Obviously, I saw it with you two, Nick and AJ. And I echo what you said, Nick. It's one of the first theatrical experiences where I was like, I just saw a bad movie.
Yeah.
Like, before this, it was like, oh, I get to go to the theater. No matter what I watch, it's always entertaining.
Yeah.
And this was one of those first times where I was like, I was not entertained. That was not good
Not
at all.
Maximus.
I think the only other one was, and I don't know if this was the same year or not, but another one of our friends had invited us to go see.
The Hulk.
No, it was like
Oh.
it was Epic Movie or something like
Oh
that.
gosh.
Oh, is
Yeah.
it one of those like stupid off the wall like scary movie level
Yes,
movies?
one of those-
It was like the
and-
number 43 or something like that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I was a juvenile, early teenager, and that movie was not funny. And that's like literally my demographic. This is I'm supposed
Did
to
they
laugh
make
at
fun of
something.
Narnia in that one?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I know
that's
exactly
the
which one.
exact-
And I saw it, and I
Yikes.
also felt very disappointed by that movie.
I also feel like we have to give it to our parents for like really being selective in our movie choices when we were kids. 'cause
Yeah.
The fact that we went that long without having a letdown is
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
I know.
impressive.
But yeah, those are the first two films that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Before we move on to the story, David, you want to do a quick call to action?
Yeah. So, we're really trying to get ourselves out there, promote ourselves. And one of the big things that we can do to do that is have all of our loyal listeners go out and give us, some ratings, some reviews. I think one of the big things for us is getting 5 stars on Apple. If you feel like, dropping us a comment on there would be great. Also, if you have any suggestions for movies, I mean, we're also open. I am on the Instagram, so if you feel like reaching out to us, feel free.
Yeah, slip us a 50.
Yeah. Wait. I was like, we won't go to 10, Reese. Yeah. So, if you feel like helping us out, there you go.
Anyway, are y'all ready to get into the story here?
Yeah,
don't
boy,
think
am
I'll
I
ever be ready, but-
ever.
All right, well, we're going to do it. We're going to rip the Band-Aid off.
Our beautiful lands have been ravaged by a ruthless king. And our people live under the shadow of tyranny.
As long as I am king, disloyalty will be punishable by death.
There is no one left for you to fear, my king.
It wasn't always like that. There was a time when the world lived in peace, protected by warriors astride mighty dragons. They are nothing but stories now. All we have is hope that a dragon will be born again, and one will rise to lead us to freedom.
I won what was stolen from me. Without it, I'm vulnerable.
Your day will come too, Eragon, and you will decide for yourself the kind of life you wish to lead.
You're the only one who can save us.
I know your story is true.
You're the next dragon rider.
Arya, elf princess of Elismira, flees with a strange stone, pursued by Durza, a dark sorcerer under King Galbatorix. When Durza corners Arya, she uses magic to send the stone away. Eragon, a farm boy living in the country of Alagasia with his uncle, is hunting for food when he witnesses the stone appearing. Hoping to trade it for food, Eragon brings the stone home and finds a blue dragon hatching from it. As he touches the dragon, a magical mark is burned into his palm. A few people are shown reacting to this incident, including Arya, an old man named Brahm, and Galbatorix himself.
Wow.
That's a very odd way of phrasing that for some
It's
reason.
a very paraphrased way of what happened in the first half of the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the thing that was most jarring about this movie, because you have that moment where you're still waiting to feel out a film, you know what I mean? Where you're not quite sure if this is something you like or don't like.
Yeah.
And the thing that always bugged me was the music. The music just never really fit what was happening. And
Not at all.
I felt like it was trying to compel me to feel something that I wasn't witnessing on the screen. And so that always took me out
Yep.
of the picture.
The music has never been so heavy-handed to me. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's like, and it's not bad music, I should say. It's
Yeah.
like, I actually
Yeah.
like the music. It's louder than I feel like it should be.
Overbearing.
So it's just always forcing your emotion in a direction that doesn't match.
Yeah, so here's what I thought of instantly when I was watching this. I thought of the Hobbit movies, and I think the Hobbit movies are actually good and competently made, but those Hobbit movies are trying so hard to recapture the epic tone of Lord of the Rings.
Right.
And the themes of the music, while some of
Yeah.
them are really great and suitable for most of the movie, there's other times where it's like they're rehashing a Lord of the Rings theme that is too epic for what's
Right.
happening on the screen. And that was exactly the way with Eragon, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm supposed to be like tearing up here because of the music, but this is not an
Right.
emotional scene.
Well, there are also moments where people are just talking and this music is still going. But I feel like the problem is there are a lot of movies where sometimes the silence is more impactful in certain moments. So like when he's having a kind of a heart-to-heart with his uncle, there's this weird kind of sweeping music going on where it's like really forcing you to feel something, and the whole time I'm thinking, I just don't know these people
Am I
enough to
supposed to?
actually care
Yes.
the way I should be right now.
And the worst part is Patrick Doyle. I really like his music,
Yes.
especially after Thor. Like,
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite actually Marvel scores. Is Patrick Doyle's like just that whole sweeping like piece he has going during the credits of Thor. Even
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah, you're right. I think the score is actually good if isolated from the movie.
Right.
yeah. And there's a
Like-
couple parts later in the movie when it works, but like for the first majority of the movie where we are right now, it just
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like what I'm watching. Like when they're wressling or whatever, and this like
That's a
kind of
weird-
joyful like
Brotherly
kitty
love.
around, you know? It's
Yeah,
just like,
it's really strange.
Instead of focusing on that, what we should have been focusing on was the apprehension of learning Saphira as a hatchling,
Right.
and just the anticipation of and the mystery of what the egg was.
Yeah.
And the whole hatching process in the book was, it sets the start of the character development. We see him as an apprehensive youth, and we don't get that here at all.
No.
Wait, yeah.
Him as a kid or the dragon?
Both. I mean, he's a young adult.
Okay, I don't know
and-
if we got to it yet, but I want to know about the dragon's transformation because I don't know if that's
Yeah,
that
we're not
forward.
we're not
next.
there
Okay,
yet.
okay.
Yeah.
So-
Especially because the stone is like supposedly this big thing in Galbatorix. Like the first time we see John Malkovich, he goes, "I cannot live without my stone," or whatever he says.
Bring it back
Yeah.
to me.
You know,
And the stone itself, for something that is so visually intensive and special effects intensive, they focused all of their money and attention on Saphira's design. But the egg itself, as we see in the books as well, but I mean, it's supposed to be intricate and capture. It's just supposed to be magical.
it just
Yeah.
It looks like a blue jelly bean.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
it's a
So,
giant
Straight
blue
out of
jelly bean.
Osmosis Jones.
Another thing that this movie is really bad at is just establishing everything. This is something that Zack Snyder movies suffer from as well, where they're more about the big moments instead of the build-ups to
Right.
those big moments.
Yeah.
Like this first opening is just like, oh, big moment, big moment, big moment, big moment. And it's just showing you these big moments that you're supposed to feel something about. But it's not leading up to them at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Like this, whatever, Eragon, the name of the movie, you don't get a sense of his character at all because it's just jumping so quickly to these bullet points
Yeah.
that are like, that they have to hit.
and
You
I
know?
feel like this is one of my first big critiques of the movie is that the editing is just terrible in the
Yeah.
beginning because,
Yeah.
like you said, we're jumping through things. We're never given a moment to let things settle,
Right.
And really get to enjoy characters or anything. you know?
Yeah, like what happened with his brother? Like that wasn't set up at all.
Yeah,
just
it's like,
leaves.
hi,
He's
I'm
just leaving.
It's like, hi, I'm your cousin. Oh, by the way, here I go.
Oh, his cousin.
Am I supposed to be
I
sad about
understand
this?
there's a obstacle for adapting a book into film. Like you have to
Correct.
condense things. You can't touch on every plot point, every minor, strand of quest and side story and all that stuff. But this was just, let's swam through it and we get the general idea this kid has a dragon and something happens.
Yeah.
So I do want to say, and Irina kind of brought this up, but as someone who's never seen this movie before today, basically, it didn't lose me yet in this point. I will say I think the pacing and energy was high enough, and I understood what was being shown to me.
Yeah.
It
A
loses
little bit
you,
of
though.
giddy energy,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah.
I think piggybacking on what Nick was talking about, where you don't have moments to actually settle, I felt that way very strongly about the villains or the antagonists in this, where I would only see maybe 5 seconds of them, and then it will jump back to the protagonist. And I don't mind there not being as much showing the villains because, you got to focus on your main character so you can care for them. But really those scenes, all they felt like to me were, hey, let's just remind you there is a villain,
Yeah.
and then we'll get back to the story.
And it's especially
yeah.
bad when your villain is lazier than Thanos, and he's just like, "Hey, look at my map. Look at this. I'm going to talk to you." He's like just in the same room the whole time,
He
and
never
he's never
leaves that
doing
room.
anything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
honestly, Robert Carlyle carries more of a menacing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you almost forget.
persona,
You
yeah.
forget about John Malkovich's
Yeah.
character or Galbatorix. Durza's like the main threat. I'm actually kind of like intimidated by him.
He seems like the one I'm actually looking out for, and John Malkovich is just kind of hanging out there and
Yeah.
I don't
And-
on his chair.
I hope I remember to come back to this. There's something about Durza I want to bring up later on, but I honestly think you could have taken out John Malkovich and put some of his money, the money they spent on him, towards effects, and I'll bring up that later
Yeah.
with Durza.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think effects are the least of this movie's problems, though. Did we want to? Oh
Talk
no, we
about
got to. Let's
actors?
talk. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
talk about the actors here. So we got Jeremy Irons, Ed Spaliers, obviously John Malkovich, Robert Carlyle. We've talked a bit about the latter. Let's talk a little bit about the performances from our protagonists here. So Ed Spaliers, what do we think of this Eragon character?
By this point, I'm not 100% certain
Yeah.
if I disliked him yet, but his acting,
It's for me it's passable. Like I haven't read the books, so I don't know what he's supposed to be like. So he seems just kind of like this generic, I'm a teen and I don't know what life is about.
He's such an overconfident
Yeah.
little snot. Like,
Well, he's supposed to be a farm boy, and he has the most pristine look of all the villagers in this whole location.
Yeah.
They're all talking about being underfed and not, suffering, but he's like, a plump little blonde-haired,
Blue-eyed.
pristine little handsome boy.
And he has a perfect leather vest that's form-fitting.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
I don't know if I don't know if my expectations were up because I looked at some reviews beforehand, and a lot of people said Ed Speleers.
Yeah, Speleers. There's
Speleers.
Speleers.
Yeah. They said that his performance was, one of the better parts of the movie, and I don't know if that got my expectations up or what, but I honestly it felt like he had very short lines. Maybe it was just the writing, but
Yeah.
he delivered them so short that there was just like nowhere for him to go, and I
Yeah.
just
Right.
didn't get much from him, and I never connected to him, especially not in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's again like the director who, I'll give him credit for you made a movie. Okay,
Yes.
good
Yeah.
job. But it's a lot of that, here's the line you have to say, but none of the lead ups to the line that you have to
Right.
say. It's like, here's the line that ends the statement.
Yeah.
But not the ones.
They really missed the mark on directing him. I know he came off as a greenhorn. The experience thing is a factor, young actors. It was really evident, especially later on in the movie, that he was having trouble building rapport with Saphira.
Right.
Just because of CGI and the nature of filming that, he couldn't really get into delivering his lines to a tennis ball. And that's I can't imagine, being a professional in that environment, especially young and inexperienced with that. That said, the heart of this book and the story as a whole is the relationship between a boy and his dragon, Eragon and Saphira, who are emotionally, mentally intertwined to the extent where they even say, if one dies, basically the other dies. And it's such a huge pivotal theme of the books where we don't have that relationship in this movie at all, and
Right.
it's very obvious.
Yeah, I feel like the most we get from them is that right here at the beginning when Saphira hatches and she's a baby that isn't really talking, and he's just hanging out with his new pet kind
Right.
of, and then that's the most I've ever felt from both of them, maybe
Yeah.
until the end.
Insert like hiccup montage.
Yeah.
The whole time
Yeah.
watching this, I was like, How to Train Your Dragon does this so much better.
Yeah, like the best thing this did was inspire someone at DreamWorks to go further.
Yeah,
Yep,
exactly. So how about Jeremy Irons?
I love
Brom.
him.
Yes.
He's the best.
Yeah.
He's the highlight. And honestly, we have the movie going on in the background, and it actually doesn't look bad. And I think a lot of it is audio issues for me. Mm-hmm. The music is jarring. Some of the line delivery is weird.
And the pacing.
The pacing's strange, but I had happened to see the scene with Jeremy Irons when he's first confronted by the guards, and you see him just kind of sitting there on a chair.
Yeah.
And I think I remember from my first experience watching this movie, just when he popped up, I suddenly felt, really happy.
Mm-hmm.
He has this way of when he's in a movie, you're just happy to see him there.
Yes.
Yeah.
My energy level is for this movie when I was watching it, it was almost heavily based off of how long Jeremy Irons was on screen and the space between them. So I was like, man, okay, now I'm invested in this movie because I see Jeremy Irons' performance. I'm like, okay, maybe it can get better from here.
Yeah. Right.
And then he'll go off screen for a while, and I'm like, okay, yeah. Oh, Jeremy Irons is back in here.
They underutilized him even as much as he kind of backpacked the movie or carried the movie. He, and his Brom, the character, he's the vehicle for the delivery of the exposition. He creates the world building, the setting, the stories, the lore, everything, the backstory.
Yes.
Right.
Builds the world of Alagasia and the mysticism of it, the magic, everything that is so fantastical about it.
And it takes a master actor like him to make expository dialogue seem
Interesting.
natural and interesting.
Yeah.
Whereas like what he has to do, he's a plot device, but he integrates with the world in a realistic way, whereas everyone else it's very cardboard.
And
But
honestly,
here they
his-
didn't give him enough lines to do that effectively.
Yeah.
And honestly, his delivery of his lines is so engaging. I would literally just watch a movie where he tells me what happened rather than watch the actual movie.
Right,
Like,
right.
Can we
that's
just
how
get a read through of the book with
Yeah.
Jeremy
Yeah,
Irons doing all
Ooh,
of it?
I would like to listen to that.
Jeremy Irons audiobook. I'm down for that.
I think the thing he does so well here is, and you don't really notice it much until he shows up on the screen, is that when he talks, you actually feel like he's really trying to put himself in that world. Like there are a lot of actors where they're kind of just, yeah, I'm in a fantasy film. They don't really believe what they're saying.
Urgles and
They're-
elves
yeah.
and all
Whatever
that
those
stuff.
are.
But Jeremy Irons always puts 100% into it.
Yeah.
He was also in that movie Dungeons and Dragons, and I still loved him
Yeah.
in that too. But it takes someone with true courage to just, jump into a bunch of fantasy films. And I think it's because he actually just enjoys the experience.
Yeah, it might be a paycheck film for him, but at least he's earning that paycheck.
Yeah.
So let's talk about our last protagonist that's been introduced here, Sienna Guillory, the princess or whatever, Arya, that likes to smile right into the camera in an awkwardly fashion.
Wasn't she an elf in the book?
She's supposed to be an elf here as well.
Yeah, she's called an elf princess.
Irene and I talked about
the
that
physical
too.
appearance that they went with, costume design and everything. Like, it's a fantasy story. I get that not everything is going to, again, be exactly how it was described in the book, but this movie, they didn't really try.
I don't even remember them using the word elf, but maybe I just missed it.
Yeah.
They may have brought it.
David and I were talking about it, and I said, oh, and that lady, was she an elf?
And I was like, I don't know.
Elf
I just finished watching the movie.
I know she was a princess.
Do you know, it's weird because this movie is 2 hours long.
Yeah.
You think that's enough to at least, establish certain basics of fantasy
which
lore.
Which is 17 minutes longer than the theatrical.
This is a scene I would have liked to see, how she infiltrated the place, at least little bits of it, and got that egg and is in the middle of this forest running away from makeshift ring wraiths or whatever.
The Rogue One version of Eragon.
Yeah. So I also, unfortunately, I honestly can't judge this actress for anything because she's not given anything to do really except lie on her back and have kind of fake orgasms. Yeah. That's what she does for most of the film.
Yeah. It's a shame because this character was not written this way in the book. And that was what I wrote several times in my notes. This character is not how it is in the book. And it's a far cry. It's not even, they're a little bit off. Oh, they didn't have black hair. Oh, no, their entire character is different.
Yeah, and if you're going to adapt a book, I get that you can take your own creative liberties, and I haven't read the book, but if you are calling it Eragon, which is the name of the book, you have to abide by certain, rules, at least,
as long as you're staying true to the meaning and the spirit of it.
In all fairness, and I don't want to, beat a dead horse with this, that it wasn't the book, because... like Reese said, you need to take creative liberties, and it's called an adaptation for a reason. You have to change certain things.
Right.
This movie gutted things that were critical for the continuance of the series and the story afterwards. And we can talk about that later in the franchise aspect of it.
Right.
But it wasn't just a superficial aesthetic change. It was the core bones of the story, and what we were supposed to get, we didn't.
I'm very curious to hear what that was.
It's not like a Harry Potter had green eyes. Why does he have blue?
And just to kind of build off of that too, I feel like one of the biggest issues I had with the movie is they took the most derivative things out of the book that were already derivative and left almost everything that was unique about it.
Right.
Which just made the movie even more of a carbon copy of every other Lord of the Rings, Star Wars movie.
Yeah, those are the two.
And that's the criticism. And Christopher Paolini, being a 14-year-old when he first envisioned this world, he's a juvenile writer of young adult fiction. So, yes, it's not the most critically acclaimed writing style or anything like that, but his writing and all of its faults make this story look like something much more than it was. And it was an entertaining story, and that's a whole other story. Like, this is about the movie, not the books. But like Nick said, it distilled the cheesiness of the archetypes of high fiction, and we'll talk about this later shortly here. Again, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves.
Right.
But Paolini really kind of subscribed to another aspect of world building and fantasy, and that's magic. And magic is a powerful thing. And in fantasy fiction writers, you have Brandon Sanderson's rules of magic, where there's soft magic or hard magic, just like there's hard magic or hard science, soft science.
Is there like high fantasy, low fantasy kind of thing?
It's a little bit different than that, but it's basically setting rules for the magic. Whereas like in Harry Potter, you have, that's a bad example because that's a hybrid as well.
Yeah.
But Lord of the Rings, you have kind of vague, for lack of a better word, magic of the ancient magic of the world and the feelings that kind of move and make things happen wordlessly, and then you have things that follow prescribed rules and stuff like that.
Right.
Paolini really did a good job for his age in establishing that. And here, the magic, of the movie, the magic of the story, kind of relies on that, the spirit as well, and we don't get that. That was stripped as well.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's enough ranting on the differences, I guess. But, yeah, this movie lacked the magic, figuratively and literally.
Yeah.
As I was watching this, and I haven't read the books, I got the sense that maybe the people who wrote this movie, took into account that the book was written by a 15-year-old, and they were like, well, obviously this can't be great, so we're gonna adjust this as much as we want to make it fit.
So they got the spark notes. Oh, what's the plot? The one little blurb paragraph. Okay, let's make a movie based on that.
Dude,
Yeah.
It's
whole
really
movie,
sad.
the whole movie feels like no one had any actual trust in the source material.
Yeah.
Like as the director, somewhere along the line, someone said this is not going to work, and they just kind of I don't know, waved a
Scrapped
few things
a lot
on
of
the
it.
line.
Sorry for bringing us too high level already, but
No,
I
you're
don't know if
fine.
you want to go with that with the plot.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
All right. Eragon shelters and feeds the dragon and teaches her to fly as she gradually grows to full size. I'm going to pause because that's an
Gradually,
extremely
you say.
laughable
That
statement.
was not gradual at all.
She speaks to him through their thoughts and calls herself Saphira. When they are out, Durza's monstrous minions, the Razak, arrive at the village to look for the dragon and the rider, killing Eragon's uncle in the process. Blaming Saphira for his uncle's death, Eragon sends her away. Brahm shows up, takes Eragon away from the village, warns him of Saphira's importance, and urges him to call her back. Eragon calls Saphira with his thoughts. She hears everything that Eragon says and comes back, forgiving him for what he previously said.
Aww.
It's just playing out right now.
So that first line of that little plot point that he taught her to fly and she gradually grows up, that is not what I saw in the movie.
Yeah. No,
that's not what I saw
It's quite the opposite.
That was one of the biggest moments for me.
he decides
I
to run
actually-
out. He decides to run out one day,
Yeah.
dragging
Push her,
aloft on his
yeah.
hands,
Throw her.
throws it up in the air.
And Reese made the comment when we were watching this again that it's like a Pokemon evolution.
I know it
Bang,
is.
bang, lightning flash. She's like 10 times her size.
Yeah.
I,
It really
I
was.
actually am curious. I want to know what that transition was in the book. Like, how was it described?
As I alluded to earlier, it was a process. I mean, this took up physically probably a quarter of the actual pages in the novel.
Okay.
Because it is a coming of age story for two characters who grow to know each other, two cross species, and one previously thought extinct species.
Yeah.
Fantastical, even within the in story world. And so they're learning about each other, they're learning about themselves, the process of the struggles. It's a coming of age character growth thing in the books. And here it's like bing bang boom, you got a fully grown dragon. Oh, but she can't write, breathe fire. And even the first flight scene, which was kind of pivotal, where Aragorn, wow, I said Aragorn.
Yay.
I am
Exactly.
completely out of
Yep.
it.
I'm not alone.
Aragon's first flight with Saphira, has legs get chapped because of her scales, and the descriptiveness of everything is just lost in this movie, where it's just like trying to sweep you along with, I don't know, it's it's not descriptive.
There's the movie I kind of, and it's the movie that we saw like before this one, year before, but King Kong. It establishes that relationship between Anne, I want to say her name is, and King Kong
Yeah.
so well. You feel like,
Yeah.
and King Kong doesn't even have to say anything. It was so effortless with that chemistry between Anne and this CGI
CGI,
beast. And this one it has the gall to think that they can establish that in one
Yeah.
scene.
But
No.
hey,
I'm
what
like-
they don't have is what they can read each other's thoughts.
Well, that's the other thing too, is it's like Saphira, she grows up, but she's already got the ancient knowledge of everything. She already knows her name. We're in the book, wow, I'm going to mess this up.
Aragorn.
Aragon
Even the Wikipedia page
is searching to
redirects you
find the appropriate name for her. And there's the inherited genetic memory, so to speak, of the dragon in the egg. But again, they're not growing together. They're not discovering their identities together.
right.
And intertwining their identities as dragon and rider.
Okay, so that is something that I wanted to bring up as someone who didn't read the books and has never seen the movie. She seemed so knowledgeable, as if she had this intelligence from another time. Is it some sort of incarnate knowledge that is embedded in her, or
So that's how the movie chose to differ. Some of that did exist as, I guess, generational memory, for lack of a better term. So as a species, their magical memory and stuff like that is a shared species. Dragons, they know certain things or have instincts, might be a better way to put it. But you don't,
Yeah.
It's interesting because it also breaks some of the later chemistry and relationship between Brahm and Eragon,
Right.
with the name Saphira being meaningful in that respect. That was cut out of this movie as well. It's just this movie, there's so much nuance that was in the book, and those little details that actually bring a character to life, and the relationships with each other that bring those characters and make them real and make you relate to them, especially as a young adult. This movie is just like, let's take all the action, strip it, and make it bright. Let's put all our money into how this dragon looks. Which they did a good job, and you can see that the director, that was his forte, was special effects, and they did that. But it was at the sacrifice of the heart of the story.
But at what cost?
A pretty cool fix to at least get to the situation where you have to have a quick dragon relationship set up. I know they didn't want to spend a lot of time on it, but they could have had like in Lord of the Rings again. If this one's going to ape Lord of the Rings, do it right. Have a, before this movie happened, before the title credits, you have what is it called? The pre-intro.
Yeah.
The prologue.
Yeah, the prologue. That's
the pre-intro.
The prologue. If you had it centered around Brahm and the death of his dragon or something like that, and you actually show Jeremy Irons in the beginning before it cuts to Eragon and all of this, that would really, I feel help set up the type of bond that you have with these dragons. Yeah.
To
it's
me,
not there.
The impression almost seemed like dragons were slaves to their riders, because they even bring up the fact that, if a dragon dies, the rider doesn't. But if a rider dies, the dragon does. Yeah. So it's specifically relying on the rider, and the dragon just does whatever they tell them to.
Which is antithetical to the point of the book, is that dragons are not beasts of burden. They are actually, a wondrous species in their own right, and that was their role in the world as well. So it really is kind of a slap in the face to what the book actually was trying to do.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm not a fan of his Dark Materials. Have y'all heard of it?
The
Golden Compass and all that.
Yeah.
That's right.
But there's one thing that series does better than this, and that's the bond between the human and their animal, or whatever it's called.
Familiar.
The familiar.
Something.
That's right.
Yeah.
If the familiar dies, the human dies. If the human dies, the familiar dies. It's an equal relationship.
Yeah.
A give and take on both ends, or that bonds them closer because they realize they both need each other.
I think there's a point where Saphira even says, well, better that you die than,
Right.
or better that I die than
Which
you
is
die.
a corruption from how it was in the actual story. Well, and it cheapens it. It really does.
Yeah, I don't see why they needed to change that.
To me, it just seems like a weird plot device where, we don't have to worry about, explaining why the dragon is just flying around willy-nilly, an easy target, basically. So he has to be the sole person that they're chasing after.
Yeah.
So we'll just remove that from the picture.
Rachel Weisz's voice was appropriate, I feel.
Yeah, I liked
that
her.
was a great casting choice. What threw me off was I got the Homeward Bound effect, where you see an animal, and this movie really treats the dragon as an animal, unfortunately, with just a straight, flat voice overlay. Instead of giving that, some kind of effect to characterize it, make that, whatever the adjective for dragon is. It just sounds like someone's talking as a dragon's face is on the screen.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's one of the hardest things to translate over to the film also, which there's so many different techniques you could have used to make that work. But when you're just having two people have a telepathic conversation, you have to find an interesting way to make that work on screen. Because in the book, you're already just reading the words.
Right.
But on the screen, unless there's action going on, you're not going to be as engaged as you would otherwise, because we're not used to communicating like that. You're watching them communicate that way, and you're just like, I cannot relate.
No, but they played music. You're supposed to feel the music.
Sadly, I felt that even though Saphira is basically visualized here, just a CGI character, but I felt so sad that she could only read the thoughts and communicate with this character Eragon and
Who
not
sucks.
Brahm, because I felt that both she and Brahm would at least have more chemistry as far as dialogue.
So she did speak to him eventually, and there was a subtle effect, in all fairness, that it kind of had a little bit of a reverb or echo effect in the movie, where when she's speaking to the group, so to speak, instead of to Eragon directly, it adds that little bit of layer, and I think that was a subtle indicator of Saphira is speaking to Brahm.
Okay.
But again, it's to the intimate nature in the original story that Saphira chooses to speak to him instead of to everyone else,
Right.
because of their special relationship.
Right.
And it was lost here, like it's just, oh, she's just talking to him, she's ignoring Brahm. And spoiler alert, we'll probably just throw this out there for anyone who hasn't read the books and wants to. Brahm's original dragon that died was named Saphira. And that's why it was so impactful to Brahm's character to see something that was reminiscent of, something that was so intimate to him before, and he struggled and survived through his grief and his loss. And Eragon, just by happenstance of hearing that name in his stories, picks the word Saphira because that fit. And so it's that kind of cycle of fate and things like that. And there's even more to that in the stories.
Wow.
Anyway, that's all to say.
Bomb drop over here, man.
Cycle of inheritance.
There's so much emotion that's lost in this because they're going through the motions. They're wanting to dazzle you. And to their point, again, the director is focused on the visual effects.
And that dragon looked
They
good.
focused all their attention on Saphira. She did look good. And originally, as a young person, I didn't care for it because, again, it wasn't how it was described in the book.
Right.
But they did it well. And they actually did their homework. They modeled her after eagles in the flight of eagles. And so that's when she takes flight. All the flight scenes are fun and they feel real because it's actually modeled after something we're all familiar with.
Right.
Whereas if you're watching maybe a bat-like type of flight, it's going to look disjointed and jarring. And it's like, oh, it's just
Erratic.
Just like
fantasy.
the Game of Thrones style.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I give them credit for that. That's props to them
Another-
because that was a good decision.
Yeah.
Another thing that I have to begrudgingly give them credit for is that, and actually this is to its detriment, but it's still like there's a positive end to it as well. But the pacing is fast.
Yes.
Like it's like I wasn't bored watching it. It was
Yep.
it was like, yeah, it's throwing all this stuff at me, but there was no emotion when I was watching it. But I wasn't like
At least
change the
they're moving
channel.
along.
Yeah, kind of
Yeah.
like when are we getting to the next thing? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is actually the weird thing. It's like it works and it doesn't work because on the one hand they're rushing everything along. She's suddenly grown up.
Yeah.
They're out of the village already.
Garrow's death just gets
Yeah,
or that's his uncle. They don't name him in the movie. Garrow, his uncle, he just finds him dead at the farm, and it's like, oh, he's covered in some sticks with a scratch on his head, and let's get over it.
But then on the other hand, too, though, I think it goes like a whole hour in the movie before anything I feel like actually happens.
Yeah.
So it's like we take a long time to try to move really fast, and it's this weird dichotomy where they just didn't stick either way.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
It was all about energy, but not about story.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
Well,
to
I want to touch on the Razak as well because,
Yep.
both Durza, who is a shade, basically
some
a sorcerer that's, very, very much. A shade in the book is a sorcerer who's called on demons and dark spirits who have basically taken over, possessed him to the point where he has not control over who he originally was. So, kind of like the story of Legion.
Didn't
almost.
get that at all
Yeah.
in this.
And he's a formidable foe, so that, the later the movie, his epithet is Shade Slayer. And that's, it's something that hasn't been done in, maybe twice in history.
Yeah.
In the stories. And so, like Irina mentioned earlier, I think Galbatorix was originally supposed to be a teaser for the rest of the sequels. And Durza is really supposed to be the antagonist for this particular movie. But the Razak fell flat because they were supposed to be incredibly monstrous and
Like Uruk-hai.
and insurmountable.
more like
those are the
Ring
Urgles.
Oh, okay, okay.
The Razak,
So I got them all mixed
They're
up.
supposed to be extremely deadly potent. Like they're very fearsome, and they're just like a couple like zombies that popped out of the ground randomly that are minions.
Yep.
And so it doesn't
Are those the bug people?
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. So it doesn't really put that contrast and that sense of danger and urgency that this boy is figuring things out as he go, fleeing for his life, but also trying to flee somewhere where he makes a difference, find out his place in the world against all these, these lethal threats. Here it's just like, we'll walk across the bridge and shoot an arrow or two. And here we have these bastardized Urgles who are more like, Paolini was a little bit derivative. I'll give him, like, from Tolkien especially.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen Space Quest? I'm just saying, they look like the guys from Space Quest.
The Urgles are also, they're not necessarily a throwaway villain, but they're supposed to be, monstrous as well.
Quest.
They're almost Minotaur, they're called rams, with, horns, and it's not just some dumb brute guy with tattoos on his face who's like, oh.
Yeah.
Like it just cheapened it. Again, they are devaluing what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And
It's
I
like
don't-
they took everything that wasn't human out of it.
Yeah, and I don't understand if that's like because budgetary reasons, like, oh, we, put our money into making Saphira look pretty, so we can't make any kind of other fantastical creatures. Let's just stamp some dots on some guys and don't give them any lines. And it just, why? Like your whole contrast, your dynamic range of the movie and your emotion like is lost because you don't have anything to root for or root against.
Yeah, also, this guy Durza is so overpowered with abilities, yet he sends out these cronies who are basically inefficient in every way to do all his work, and he's mad. What did he expect? Like, I don't.
He's
too focused on giving Arya some ecstasy, I guess.
Well, okay, it is kind of like Lord of the Rings, where you have Saruman ordering out the orcs and the Uruk-hai to bring back the hobbits, right?
But he's also not that overpowered. I don't want to get into Lord of the Rings, but
I
I will
know
say
it's hard not to compare, though.
I just want to say the villains in Lord of the Rings are a lot more subtle, where they don't have direct power.
Right.
Yeah.
They're more like manipulators, and in this case, Durza is actually someone who could just show up and like take care of everything.
Also, like Saruman is more like effectual through the way he manipulates minds, and so he has to stay in one place for real reasons.
Yeah.
But this character, he's just he's being directed by this king, Galbatorix, who gets to sit on his throne and just enjoy sitting around flames,
being
I
John
guess.
Malkovich.
But yeah.
The takeaway from that is in the books there you have individual threats who are all somehow threatening, even though they coincide with each other, but there's still that hierarchy with the layers of the onion, so to speak. Here it's just everything kind of is by Galbatorix's command, and then we have Durza, and then we have these two throwaway Razak who are like, why are they here in this movie? Yeah. They don't do anything. They don't serve any purpose.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh, we got to put these guys in because they were significant in the book. But
and I know Reese wants to go on, but the last thing on adaptations, if you're doing an adaptation, even if you don't get it perfect, you want to see the thing come to life. And the whole world that Paolini's created, no matter how derivative it is not coming to life. They're just like dumbing it all down.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll quit digressing on this.
No, it's fine.
We'll give you more points to digress on.
I read this series and I followed it, and Paolini was very involved with his fans, and Shurtagal, the fan site that he had active hands in, and interviews and stuff. Like, I followed everything, read this cycle multiple times, and he's moved on to other stuff that's actually really good as well. So that's why I'm so passionate about this.
No, it's good.
Something that you were so involved in, you see not done well.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
It's disappointing. So that's why I'm so.
We like the passion here.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
I know Noah's probably sad he's not here. I talked to him about this before, and he said this is the one I really wanted to get emotional about. So.
Oh man,
he already got emotional in the Pirates episodes. Read 2 paragraphs if you can.
Brahm is leading the group to the Varden, rebel freedom fighters opposing Galbatorix. On the way, Brahm fills Eragon in on the knowledge of dragon riders, Galbatorix, Durza, and the Razak. He also trains Eragon's sword fighting. In a small village, Eragon meets a fortune teller named Angela, who tells him of a girl awaiting his help, and of his dangerous path ahead. When Brahm and Eragon are attacked by Galbatorix's servants, the Urgals, Eragon attempts to mimic Brahm and wipes out the whole group with a magic attack of blue fire, then falls unconscious from the strain. Saphira saves him. Brahm teaches Eragon to control his magic and bond his powers with Saphira. After flying for the first time, Eragon and Saphira help Brahm kill the Razak, and Brahm reveals he was once a rider before the dragon was killed by Morzan, a rogue rider allied with Galbatorix. Durza sets a trap for Eragon, using Arya as bait. Hearing her telepathic calls, Eragon finds her, but is ambushed by Durza. Eragon is outmatched, and Brahm arrives to help him, getting mortally wounded in the process. Eragon vengefully shoots an arrow into Durza's head, causing him to disappear. The trio escapes, joined by Murtagh, and Brahm dies of his wounds while flying on Saphira.
So, a big problem I'm having with this at this point, while the plot is zipping along, the pacing is good, Brahm's still around, at least until the end of this. I hate how quickly the stupid Eragon character learns new abilities and is able to just execute immediately.
You're still not confident in his ability.
I was so confused.
Like you said, we needed a training montage because you're trying to, condense, years worth of training, and they even impressed that upon Eragon in the book.
Show
These
him
people
fail.
need masters to, the writers needed years and years of study to finally master magic.
This is he's emulating Star Wars. He's supposed to be the Luke Skywalker of this story. Did you watch A New Hope? Luke Skywalker did not have a great time, learning the Force. There was strife there. There was struggle. He did learn it.
Hey, Brom told him that if you say certain words, you can manipulate things.
Yeah. It's just like, if you had established this kid as some sort of like wonderkind who picks up things really quickly, then maybe I'd be more on board.
Yeah.
But he's like this bumbling, overconfident guy who just happens to...
I'll speak for Noah and say Chad.
Chad. Yes, he's a bumbling Chad.
Yeah, but he can use dragon eyes.
Now he just says the word twig and it kills a Razak.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think that.
I didn't realize the Razak died there, by the way. I thought that the Razak were still around, and I was like, wait, they're dead?
No, he just hung them.
So
Yeah.
anticlimactic.
Yeah, he hung one of them. And that was it.
Conceptually, I do like the idea of what Brom was talking about, where like the word is the object.
thing. Yeah.
Like there's kind of this
Identity magic.
melding of things where words have power, and I wish they could just kind of focus on that a little more. And there's sort of like more of a reverence to the fact that your words have power, where this is just, you just speak it.
Yeah, and that's what I imagine.
This.
That's what I imagine Paolini's writing was shining through there
Because,
for a second.
Well, and the intent of, it's called, I think, identity magic, or the essence of an item.
Yeah.
It's got a true name magic, where you find, and certain things have been established, but also each individual has their own true name in the ancient language. And again, it harkens to the identity, who am I? Only few people are, know themselves and learn themselves enough to actually discover their true name in the ancient language in the book. And so, like, we lose that because, it cheapens it. It's the immediate gratification of this guy needs power now to move the plot along. And, we don't see that progress because, like, even by the end of the movie, it's like, I don't have any confidence in him of being a hero.
Yeah.
Right.
Another thing they glossed over from the book as far as magic goes is that they did mention that you can die for using a spell, but they didn't specifically say that if once you start magic, the spell will finish whether you have the power to finish it or not. And knowing that from the book has a whole different effect. Like in this, he tries to heal Brom and it doesn't work, and it's just like, okay. But if you really know that, and when you get like to certain points in this book where he tries to heal people, in the movie, then it has a whole different effect where you're like, oh, he could die here.
That changes
Yeah.
things
Also,
dramatically.
The grammary of the magic, like, you can't just say, you can, but only if you're really adept. Like, Brissinger is the true name for fire. If you just say fire, like, what happens with fire? It's dangerous because you're not directing it, unless you say, specific words to parse it correctly. And it kind of, it just goes into how they glossed over and took the SparkNotes version of this, like,
Well, not only that, so there's the scene where, he's first using magic, right? Where I think that was where he said fire, or the word for it. And he just, but why did he use it in this movie? He saw him sort of use it in this movie, but he barely heard it. And he's like, in this one scene, I'm going to take that word I barely heard and just shoot at these guys?
Yeah, so in the story, a little context, Brissinger, and this is where things that are ancient and, have been long established get diluted over time, where they're not really meaningful for the everyday person anymore. So Brissinger has become a swear word, basically. It's like, saying, oh, darn.
Or like Avada Kedavra in Harry Potter.
Or
but it's like, say, centuries go by and... someone just, they stub their toe and they're like, Avada Kedavra. That's what basically Brissinger has become. So he's, basically seeing him try to start a fire, having struggles, and he says Brissinger as a curse, but he's actually using it as the magical word, whereas to the everyday bystanders, like, oh, he's just, swearing because he's struggling.
Yeah.
But I guess, Brissinger has the fire aspect of it as a writer, has meaning to Eragon from, again, his identity. And so that element kind of calls to him a little bit. And so he, kind of pulls a Hail Mary and, just says it as he's shooting it and, gets lucky, basically.
Yeah.
Because he taps into that magic unintentionally. But as Nick alluded to, that's dangerous because that spell is supposed to finish itself until it does its effect.
Or he dies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's why he passes out. But, in the movie, it's like, oh yeah, Brom tried to, start a fire, and then he just shot an arrow and said Brissinger, and everybody exploded. Like, where's the lead up? Where was the explanation?
And he falls over because his mana is depleted.
Which is another thing that doesn't like cross over from a book, is you can show what's going on in his head where he decides to say Brissinger in the book, but in the movie he just says it, and like everyone said, why did he just say that?
Yes.
And you're left
Yeah.
with, another. And there's so many of those moments in this movie where something happens and you don't know why this character has done this.
Yeah.
They didn't have the information that would have led up to this. There's too much that's left unsaid in this film.
Yeah, so in the
It's
end,
just one of those.
we've talked about this before. When you adapt a video game or a book or something like that nature into a movie, you can either cater to the true fans or you can cater to the generic audience or try to straddle the fence.
Yeah.
Here they just I don't care who's watching this. If they know anything about it or not, I'm just gonna,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's like a shot in the dark.
So let's talk. Let's talk about the foolhardy, attempt to get Arya out of the castle and thus kill Brahm, the only good character in the story.
Oh gosh.
Let's break that one open.
I feel like this is jumping into Empire Strikes Back straight in through a New Hope, when you haven't even gotten out of Alderaan or out of Tatooine.
Yeah.
And all
Yep,
of a sudden
yep.
we're trying to go to Cloud City, and I'm just like,
And you're like, wait a minute, what?
you haven't even started your training with Yoda yet. Like,
But then we get to see that one guy stalking him.
Oh my gosh,
Look.
we really got to get to Murtagh or whatever.
I thought there was potential here with this moment to, add some character development to Eragon, to show him have remorse for something for once. Brahm is actually directly related. Brahm's death is directly related to my actions.
Yeah.
But no, he just kind of, sloughs that off. They have their funeral, and he barely sheds a tear.
Yeah, his brashness, killed his mentor figure, and well, I won't spoil anything.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Whoops.
it's probably obvious if you've seen any other kind of fantasy. Anyway,
Yeah.
plus I feel like this would have also been an opportunity to show him be more than just someone who's getting lucky with all these magic words. Like, if you're going to infiltrate this thing, this gives you a chance to show him as maybe a witty character or maybe a smart guy who can come up with a plan to get into this fortress.
Absolutely not.
Instead, he just says a few magic words and everything's okay.
Exactly.
Well, until you get a slew of ex machinas to get him out of it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, David, watching this, did you care about Arya's character at all?
I forgot about her existence until
Exactly.
they brought her back on.
Exactly. So, what's the sense of urgency of changing their whole direction, their whole intent of, I have to
He
go
had a
save
dream.
her?
yeah.
He had a dream.
He had a dream about a hot girl because he was jilted by Katrina, the most beautiful person I've ever seen in a random village. And it's just this, I think they kind of tried to make it important with the whole Angela, the soothsayer lady who's like, you'll meet a woman. Yeah. And so she has that little foreseeing of the future, but you don't connect the two events really.
Yeah.
You're just kind of like, oh, he had a wet dream and now he needs to go infiltrate a fortress. So like
Well, it seemed like she was having one too, based
yeah,
on the noises.
no.
And it's a shame. Like, we got that impression from something that's supposed to be dire, something
Yeah.
that's supposed to be immediately urgent, such that we're recklessly abandoning all caution and just diving into this building to save Arya. The dreams are just, it's silly.
And I
It
will
really
give
is.
I will give this to the scene that I know you guys kind of had an okay. You were okay with the pacing this far, but for me, I honestly just feel like it felt like nothing happened until this point. Like we're about an hour into the film at this point, and one issue I have with this movie leading up to this point is that it doesn't feel like they're moving anywhere as far as the scenery goes. Like Lord of the Rings,
Yeah.
which I know I shouldn't compare this to Lord of the Rings.
Okay, no, you
but-
should because
should.
this was
Yeah.
following its coattails.
But also, I think this
Yes.
could be a good point to use it too, because this is specifically something Lord of the Rings does well that other movies do well, is that you actually have the scenery change in the background. You've got typical forests in the beginning, and then you have Weathertop. Okay, we've got a landmark, and then you've got a mountain, and then you've got a rocky hill.
Yeah, there's
It actually-
distinctive features.
Exactly. It looks like we're actually going somewhere. And then for most of the first hour of the movie, you just have the same generic forest
Yep.
over and over again.
Yeah.
And
I
then at
wondered
one
about
point,
that.
you have this like big steep incline with the river, but it's like they don't use that as an establishing thing. And finally, we get to this place, and there's actually a rocky outcropping. And this is like a breath of fresh air for me because we were finally in a new scenery. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, we're somewhere new now.
Yeah.
But it took us an hour to get there.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
literally like one ride along the mountaintops that like kind of breaks up the monotony. But then after that, you're back in a forest,
Yeah.
or you're back in.
Well, that's that scene where Brahm is teaching Eragon how to sword fight because Aragon's cocky and he's like, I know how to sword fight, and me and my cousin did it all the time.
Oh, we used to slap our sticks together.
no, real sword.
In more ways than one.
Watch
Anyway,
out, Katrina.
they're on the riverbank doing this fight, and he does this thing where he is classic trope where he moves him out of the way and grabs him by the shirt and is dangling him over a precipice. But this time the precipice is 2 inches of water. and you're like,
Oh
I
no!
can't swim.
Better not get wet, farm boy.
would it have been that hard to find a cliff to fight on? Really?
I don't know.
That's what we got.
He's about to show him how to fly off of one, so they could have just,
Yeah,
Yeah, I
even
noticed.
it kind of is interesting because I think they shot in Hungary, I believe.
several Eastern
They should have
European
eaten.
countries.
It's beautiful, but the setting doesn't even match the book either. Like Carvajal, the Palancar Valley, or the original where he comes from, is like supposed to be kind of barren. The spine, which is the mountain range nearby, is supposed to be eerie and ghostly and spooky, and everything's just green and lush in this movie. And it's just like it doesn't help the tone of the development of in the struggle of the war torn. Everybody's having a terrible time under Galbatorix and everything,
Right.
and it's just like Nick said. It's kind of it's nice to look at, but it's monotonous.
And also, speaking of the setting, I have a question for you, AJ. The little fishing village they go to, is that supposed to be a bigger city in the book? I
No,
swear
they
I remember.
conflated it. So that they did go to that city originally in the book, but then they went on to Tierm, which is a giant coastal hub, a port city.
It's like a coastal Minas Tirith, right?
Yeah, essentially. And so they cut out that. I mean, and like we said, they have to cut out things for the movie, and I understand that they didn't have Jode and the whole storyline. But again, I know they have to condense things, so that makes sense to them conflating locations a little bit. But it didn't really help with the variety, like you said, and you don't feel a progression of this journey, and they're learning along the way. Like we could have used a montage for the training, we could have used a montage for traveling, and growth and stuff instead of just everything's all 0 to 100 or 0 to 60,
Or at least something other than an hour of we're walking along a trail and we're going to do a couple of other things and have some exposition and not tell you where we're going without actually going anywhere.
So back to where we are in the story. How'd y'all feel about the actual funeral scene between with Brahm and the glassing of the stone? I guess with the I thought it was okay.
I actually liked it.
Yeah. The weird thing is I felt the most when they were talking about, let him go out as a dragon rider. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
But then that scene only lasted like a second.
And you would know more. That would be more impactful if you knew that Brahm, his original dragon, was Saphira.
Yeah.
Right.
This was the first moment that it kind of felt like Dragonheart for a
Yeah,
second.
I felt that actually.
Where it was like, okay, it's kind of riffing off that, the connection between the rider and the dragon for once. Like I kind of felt a little twinge of some sort of emotion there. And then it immediately
they
dissipates
cut it
after that.
so fast.
But it's like, they almost had it.
Yeah.
They could have given Brahm and Saphira more rapport in here as well.
Yeah.
Because they do grow, to be, they grow close, and there's secrets shared between them and things like that. And it also develops Saphira's character and broadens her as well. Mm-hmm. And it was touching to have that last fight, but the crashing through and the saving of Arya kind of was like, why did we do all this? And
yeah,
Braun is
I
dead.
know.
Yeah.
And the movie is lesser for it because now we have our strongest character who is gone, and we're supposed to feel that impact, but we're supposed to also feel, the hopelessness, but we have to continue on to find ourselves and, become a man, become a dragon and rider. And it's just, everything is so flat. There's no peaks and valleys. There's no emotional dynamics.
And I do want to say the one thing I'll give the director, I think this is the best shot in the film, is when Saphira turns the tomb into glass and then kind of rears up and you see her neck go back. It looks just like the cover of the book, but like it looks real in 3D. And I think this is what the director was hired for, but we never get, much more than this throughout the film from her.
Yeah.
But this was his best shot in the film. And I think if there's anything good came out of this, it's that one almost really great rotating shot.
Yeah, it's almost as if he should have been the
visual
effects
effects
supervisor
director.
on this movie.
Peter Jackson, get in here.
I will agree. I did like that shot.
Yeah. You want to finish out the story there, AJ?
Eragon confronts a hooded figure that has been following them. He reveals himself to be Murtagh and guides them to the Varden. Soon after, Durza and his men surround the rebel camp. Eragon, Saphira, Arya, and the Varden prepare for battle. Arya, Murtagh, and the Varden fight Galbatorix's forces as Eragon and Saphira duel in the skies with Durza, who rides his own beast. Eragon and Saphira kill Durza, but Saphira is heavily injured. Eragon uses magic to heal her and once again passes out from the strain. The following morning, Eragon awakes with Murtagh at his side. He fears Saphira may be dead, but finds her fully healed. They catch up with Arya, who is on her way to Elsmere to lead the elves in the coming war against Galbatorix's revenge. She calls Eragon the Great Shadeslayer, and they part ways, promising they'll meet again. Meanwhile, in his castle, a furious Galbatorix slashes at his hanging map of Alagacia, revealing his immense pitch-black dragon, Trugan.
My gosh.
Okay.
Is that the name?
Trugan.
Okay.
So I will say my score for this movie, which I'm not revealing, would have been much lower if not for this final confrontation at the end, which while I don't think is as epic as they want it to be, is still at least more engaging. I feel like the dark dragon that Durza summons is kind of cool.
Dark magic.
And just that tussle in the sky is the first time I'm like, I actually fear for Saphira a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, there's some danger here.
Yeah.
I'm kind of engaged with this fight, even though it's over with way too quickly.
Yeah.
And it feels small scale despite the aerial battle.
Yeah.
On the ground, everything's like, oh, there's one little central area.
Yeah,
And
he
they trip
torches
over-
them once.
Then they trip over some flaming logs and kicks like in the book, this area is called Trondheim and Farthendur. I mean, that's definitely a Tolkien ripoff, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's built in within a mountain and it's an ancient dwarf city. Oh, by the way, have we seen any dwarves in this movie?
No.
No.
No dwarves, no
Did you
elves.
know that there are dwarves in
Yeah,
this
an elf.
story?
No, I
Anyway,
did not know that.
Besides the point.
From an outside perspective, it didn't bother me that there weren't dwarves because they kind of established it as this ancient city that they had long been
Right.
gone from.
Yeah.
Which I guess is what they were going for.
The Blue
But
Mountains?
if they wanted me to believe that there were actually still dwarves there working on things,
Yeah.
then I would not have believed it.
Just the aerial battle between Durza and Eragon and Saphira. I mean, it's fun. It's finally definitely a highlight from an action standpoint. But there's also, again, that lack of dynamic of, I'm in a losing battle, I'm outmatched. And then, in the book, there's so much give and take, and they split off, and they crash through Isidar Mithrin with this giant gem. And I don't know, that's besides the point, because there's so much that they cut out that is pivotal, crucial to in the later books and the later story and the development of the characters.
Yeah. I'm sorry I
And
jumped
it's-
ahead.
It's so short-sighted, and it's frustrating because this was supposed to be this, ultimate battle of like salvation of this last remnant of hope against the oppressive king Galbatorix and his giant, massive, immense. Everything's supposed to be foreboding and threatening, and this is just an underdog story. And I just like, what is this little rinky-dink fire scene? And I guess
Yeah.
they're flying, and she breathes fire.
Yeah, their
And
siege
it's like-
their siege weapons were a joke.
the lead up, the build up is just, it's so off
Yeah.
rhythm.
It's like having the Death Star battle in A New Hope, but you haven't actually introduced the characters until the moment the battle takes place.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
just like, what do I care if they win or die? And you haven't showed the bad guys do anything bad yet either. At least in Star Wars, you get to see the Death Star blow up a planet.
Yeah, and Obi-Wan never sacrifices himself. Luke never
Yeah.
gets his lightsaber. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
not
you're
the same
right,
story.
Nick.
The thing?
You never see them do anything
No.
egregiously terrible.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
He just, I think I even told this to you, Reese. It looks like Malkovich is literally reading his lines off of Durza's face.
It does. It really
Like
does.
the most phoned in, I don't know, like it was so crazy because Malkovich is a talented actor.
yeah.
Actually, I will give him this. His voice at a couple of moments did sound intimidating. And
Yeah.
it's hard to make John Malkovich seem like an intimidating overlord of a great fantasy land. Like
Yeah.
I think it was terrible casting to have John Malkovich be the bad guy,
Yeah.
but he definitely brought the presence that I think he was able to bring.
So you were saying earlier that that's one of the few characters you didn't see as like, oh, I cannot envision him as Galbatorix when you saw the trailers as a little chitlin.
Yeah.
Who would you have cast? Like, what's your like Galbatorix?
Oh gosh, I'm going back to 2006 now, right?
Yeah, you got to do it. Time machine.
Shoot. Well, off the top of my head, Al Pacino, no. That's the first person that
Hey,
came
Al
up.
Pacino.
It doesn't have to be
13.
even a big name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, Galbatorix is a mad king. It's a trope, but he's also supposed to be lethally mad, but also genius.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just not menacing. Like, he just sits there and yells at Durza, or speaks to him, actually.
I'll tell you what, I wouldn't have even cast him in this movie. I think you could have saved a whole bunch of money by not having a big name actor for just a
Yeah.
couple of scenes.
Yeah, just have Durza.
And put
Durza
that
is
somewhere.
enough.
Durza's enough as a main character in this.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
introduce us to the bad guy
And
in the next one.
You spread the seed of the whispers of Galbatorix and his oppression. Like I said, you show that to the audience.
Yeah,
that
just like
everybody-
Sauron, I guess.
Yeah, or like
yeah.
Jaws, like tease it, and then maybe show a little bit at the end. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel bad for dominating this episode. Irene and David,
Dude,
how did
no.
you feel about the Battle of Farthendur?
Boring for me. I just, because you come to these people who have been, I guess they're hiding out behind a waterfall, and it was trying to, I guess it was trying to give me the sense that there are a bunch of different ethnicities and cultures that are all kind of having found this solace here, or some kind of peace, and having this coexistence. And I just didn't feel any culture. It was just they were wearing their culture but not acting their culture.
Yeah.
And there was one point where like suddenly they greet him with open arms. He's our dragon rider. He's going to fight for us. And everyone's kind of like greeting him with this hesitancy, and they're all like, why are you acting this way around your dragon rider? He's come to fight for us. And I was like, well, I wouldn't be that confident either if this guy showed up.
I
like,
expected something more.
something more. Yeah.
more than me.
I think I just kind of started checking out for this scene, and I got the feeling that the reason they ran through everything so fast was because they wanted to have a huge battle, and it just wasn't engaging.
It didn't feel
for
like a
me.
struggle.
It didn't.
And
yeah.
Aragon in the books gets pretty much, he gets maimed. His
Yeah.
back gets slashed, top to bottom, and he deals with that injury for the remainder of his arc.
Mm.
You don't know that because we just say it's an easy, I'll get on the tail, like I said earlier, and fight off the tail of Saphira.
He did get slashed in the back, though.
It doesn't really show how damaging it was. There's
Yes.
just like he's like, oh, ow, and then he's fine.
It doesn't feel like an accomplishment to
No.
have slain Durza.
Although I
Yeah.
do like how they like flung him off the tail. That was kind of cool. Even
Yeah.
though
It was fun, but
Yeah, it was fun. It
It,
just-
doesn't feel like they've accomplished anything as an underdog.
Yeah.
I know I got us talking about the finale here, but I did want to rewind real quick and
Murtagh.
talk about Murtagh because we
God.
totally
Too old
skipped
for
over
he
him.
again
was
just
thinking
pops
the
up
same thing.
randomly.
Yeah.
And kind of like, I like his character in this, and he's kind of playful but also like self-assured. And we
Yeah.
find out he's the son of Morzan, who has pretty much never been mentioned until
Nope.
Yeah,
maybe once.
I had no idea
It's like,
why
who
he
is
was special.
Morzan? And it's the Forsworn, basically the traitors of the
Yeah.
Dragon Riders, who basically destroyed the final vestiges of
Yeah.
the establishment of the Riders and the system that basically was permeated the land and ruled Alagasia, and
killed
that's
Bronze
how.
Dragon.
Yeah, it was.
Right.
It was cataclysmic, and
Yeah.
we don't know who's Morzan. Like, okay,
Yeah,
why
they try to retroactively explain that when they get to the
Yeah.
cave, because the people there that greet them are like, "Oh, you're
Yeah.
this guy. We're imprisoning you."
Yeah.
But I still didn't quite understand like why he was.
The thing I expected and would have liked better is like from watching this, I thought, oh, the reason he doesn't want to go back is because he was the traitor. And, he's trying to do right again in the only capacity he thinks he can. He can't rejoin society there again, but he can help outwardly. But then it's like, no, I'm just the son of someone that betrayed you. And that just, oh, okay, so he's just fine and everyone else is being really upset about it. Now he's in jail.
I think they said at one point, or at least Jimon or
Digimon Hansu.
Digimon Hansu.
Jajimon.
yeah, Digimon. He said that he's like, it's not worth the risk, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Recognizing that he may not be bad based on what he said,
and I
but
get
it's
that.
not worth.
Well, at
But
the time,
yeah.
there's also supposed to be an impending threat of the Urgles are at our front door,
Yeah.
and we need to prep for battle like immediately. Like, you led them to our doorstep. Like,
Yeah.
what's wrong with you? But we got to take
Guys
care of
running
this
around
now.
outside.
But yeah, it's just there's not that impending
Yeah.
pressure, that sense of urgency or the tension.
Plus, I feel like one of the biggest issues with introducing Murtagh at this point in the film is that there's only, at least in the theatrical version, there's only 30 minutes left.
Yeah.
And so when you introduce me to this character at this point, you're telling me he's not an important character.
Yeah.
And instead, in the book, he's a lot more important than he is in the movies. So, like at this point in Avengers, we're about to have our New York fight scene, or we're like in the middle of the New York fight scene.
Yeah.
And here we haven't even gotten to the final fight. We're just finding the place where we're going to fight.
It's like you get to the New York fight scene, you're like, Captain America?
Yeah.
You're here?
It's like Superman showing up at the end of Justice League.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's so Murtaugh, I don't know. I liked him in this.
Yeah.
I think that it was just so weird that they waited this long. I think that his importance in the end, though, was not even that great.
Yeah,
I
the
honestly
performance
didn't get it.
performance is spot on for the character, and it's oddly and ironically from what little we've seen, the truest to the character in the original book, but he doesn't matter in this movie.
Shrug of the shoulders, maybe.
Yeah.
I just want to say, because I'm looking at the screen, the one thing I wanted to come back to on Durza is that his look at the final battle I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is that they changed about his face, but I love his look at the final battle.
He had a lot of
Yeah.
black makeup around his mouth and
his
eyes,
face,
I want to say.
His face looked like a lot more drawn, and you could tell there was more CGI work done to it. And before this, all that like face paint just didn't do it for me.
Yeah.
And
I was, unlike Irina, I was actually engaged by the final fight. I was like, okay, the movie, I thought it saved the best action for last, at least.
but that's still a low bar.
Doesn't have a
It
sense
is
of
a low
scale.
bar. Yeah. You're right. It didn't have a sense of scale, but it was still like, okay, at least this is, a little more engaging than what I've seen action-wise in this movie before.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actual, certain stakes here and there.
How about Saphir finally breathing fire? Did that feel like
That felt dumb.
No, it
a
did
crescendo?
not. It did not have the impact. Not at the right time. They hardly set this up too. It's like, oh, she earlier in the movie says, yeah, I'm not a full grown dragon. I can't breathe fire or whatever. And it's like, okay, that's obviously a setup for her to breathe fire at the end.
10 minutes later.
They did it at the worst time. They should have done that as like the killing blow to Durza, where it's like
the book did it that way.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like
It wasn't
Godzilla
like,
or
oh, we're about to
something.
fight. I'll breathe fire now. Like it's
No.
basically in the middle of the heat. Like we need this to happen now, and it just like
Well, the thing is, there's no scope for time on this. So I don't know when the last time she was incapable. I guess when Brahm died and she used ice because she couldn't use fire yet. What is the time between then and when she uses fire? Because in the movie, it feels like 5 minutes. It feels like
Well, it
it was
doesn't-
literally 2 days ago.
it doesn't help that it's like it's not congruous because we see basically some lightning happen and Saphira looks fully grown all of a sudden. She evolves and now she's all done growing, but yet she's not fully grown because she can't breathe fire.
Yeah.
Like we don't have that progression. I don't know. It just
It's not there.
incongruous.
The emotional moment, it does not land. So let's talk about the final moment of this movie. Saphira is alive. That was the big concern. Eragon was knocked out. And
Murtagh
then
is the worst friend. By the way, your friend might be dead. JK, she's fine.
Honestly,
She's
though.
right there.
this is a terrible joke.
It was kind of like I was watching that moment and I was a little concerned that the dragon may be dead. I was like, oh, that's kind of sad. Fooled me. So good job.
You shouldn't have been fooled by the way this movie was playing out.
I know. No,
Like-
I was like, okay, whatever.
Well, if they kill the dragon, then what sequels are they going to have?
Yeah.
New dragon.
So then he, jumps astride Saphira and catches up with his lover.
Ugh.
Who?
Yeah, Arya.
From Game of Thrones.
She looks
Arya
like
Stark.
10 years older than him. By the way.
Might be.
Well, she's an elf, so she's like hundreds of years.
They were
old.
basing it off of Star Wars. So.
Okay, gotcha.
It's his sister.
I never felt any romantic connection
I didn't
between
either.
these
Yeah.
people. Like,
Other
they're-
than he's a young boy who likes pretty ladies.
Yeah.
She has
like
some
she's-
fun dreams.
She's
Yeah.
barely in this. Honestly, it feels like the only main characters by the end of the movie are Brahm, and I'm using him first for a reason, Saphira and Eragon.
yeah.
And we don't get anything meaningful from anyone else.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the end. That's the end of the movie. Not much to say there. Are y'all ready to move on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that's the end of the story. On the other end, we're going to talk about this franchise. We're going to take a quick break. Bye. Welcome back. Let's talk about Eragon. David, you've got our reviews in a bowl.
Might have something over here.
Yeah, pull those at random, man.
All right. For a score, me, David, with a 5.
Dang,
I might be coming in at the highest score here. I think a lot of this has to do with me not reading. A lot of this might have to do with me not reading the books and not, really having much of a background with this movie. There's so many things in this that weren't as bad as I was expecting them to be. Mm-hmm. I thought that the CGI was going to be way worse than it was. I thought the acting was going to be way worse than it was.
VXFs as a director.
Yeah. So the VFX did not suffer too much in this. There's definitely things. I think the villain had some hit or miss moments, but the dragon being the biggest thing in a movie, because they actually succeeded. For 2006, not bad at all. So anyway, at that point, there's just a lot of points where I wasn't invested. I think that was the biggest thing, where you did okay with some of the actors, but the pacing, even though it had high energy, did not keep me interested in the characters. They didn't bring in certain characters at the right time. They didn't have dialogue where you needed to. So, I didn't feel like the main character was the main character a lot of the times. I don't know. I felt like Brahm was the main character most of the movie.
And you lost him in the first third of the film.
And he didn't get half the story that he was supposed to be anyway.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because this dip decided to not listen to his freaking mentor and go after some girl he'd never met before that you didn't get any sort of background on in the movie. Anyway, sorry. I digress.
Honestly, an idiot 17-year-old might do that. Now that I think about it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Give me a director who can actually make it look okay.
Yeah.
So that being said, 5 was mainly because visually, good job, visual effects artists. You made this movie look okay. And 4 of those points also go towards Jeremy Irons for hardcore backpacking this movie.
Yeah.
So that's all I have to say.
All right. Next score
is AJ with a 3.
All right, so obviously context here is I have some emotional involvement in the books and the original story. And so I'm curious to see, what the approach of rating this movie as a movie is. And so I'm looking forward to hearing, I heard David as well, and I want to hear Irina's take and Reese's take. Maybe not so much Reese's take.
I think Irina's will definitely be better than mine.
But I can't help but rate this as an adaptation of a book. I can't distance myself from that. And
loosely.
And I get it. I understand movie making. Even as someone who read Lord of the Rings before saw the films, there are changes to the story. And I understand some of those are necessary. It's a different media, it's a different, audience. We'll talk about this in the franchise portion as well. Not only did they shoot themselves in the foot for furthering this story, for crucial things that are absolutely needed for later development of the story, just big things. They shot themselves in the foot with a 12-gauge shotgun.
The foot is gone.
And set it on fire. Yeah. There's the character development is non-existent. We don't have highs and lows. We don't have any struggle that I saw. And I get that the actor is talking to a tennis ball, but the writing didn't give a lot of room to work with, and the pacing was just, it's let's rush things along. We'll hit the check boxes of a couple of things that happened in this book, and call it an adaptation of Eragon, and make a really cool looking dragon. Let's do that.
Yep.
And it utterly failed and was the opposite of a proper film adaptation. From a movie review standpoint, it looks good. The score they oddly lean too hard into, where scores can really be make or break on supporting the emotion, and they just, instead of building the story and the characters to invest you emotionally, they try to force you to feel with too much music and too loud music. And so I fault them for that. I can't. And again, this is probably me being emotionally invested in the product of this movie. I don't know. I get what they were going for from a money-making attitude, and there's some action in this. It's just that the characters are not who they were in the story.
Yeah.
And I don't feel any character development, even, from a generic storytelling point of view, trying to remove the original things that I know about the original story in the books. Like, I don't get progression in this movie. So I feel like they actively ruined the book. And that's a strong sentiment. And I understand that, like, even Paolini's writings have issues and people fault him for his stories and his writings and everything. And it's a testament to say how much of a failure this is that they butchered a 14-year-old or a, young person's writing that was not, it was derivative of fantasy and leaned heavily on other things. Like, I how do you do that? How do you cut up a already archetypical story so much that it just has even less substance?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I don't know.
I mean,
they figured it out.
Yeah, you put
found a
Flash
way.
on
Points
it.
for that.
Yeah, it's a disappointment. Like, I as much emotion as I grew up with these books and these characters, I didn't get any emotional investment in this.
Fair enough.
Next up is Reese with a 3.5.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. Look, I didn't read the book, but I knew that there were flaws with this from a narrative standpoint. I knew that they had cut stuff out. There's no character development in this. There's no, proper development of a story to make me care about what is even happening, because everything's given to you on a silver platter right when you want it. It's like this. The whole movie is like an instant gratification, revolving door with no setup to that gratification. Like, it's like, oh, here is the dragon. Here are the spells. He knows everything. Like, and as a young child, I really liked that. Like, when I was reading Harry Potter or watching the movies, I liked, having your main character, like, oh, gain this repertoire of abilities. But I also liked them going through hardships to get that, because it felt earned. This doesn't do any of it doesn't earn any of it.
Well, it's a relief that I'm seeing those faults somewhat objectively.
Yeah.
Because I just, like, the character development was lacking. And I wanted to say that was from a storytelling and narrative, failure as well.
Yeah.
And so you're validating my opinion,
Yep.
even though mine's biased.
And I think the performances, even from Ed Spaliers, who's as cardboard as he is, I wasn't, like, cringing throughout the entire movie. They're fine. They're cardboard. They get by. I think Jeremy Irons is a bright spot in this movie. I think Durza even is semi-entertaining. I wish they gave him actually more screen time.
Yeah.
The pacing, it's throwing things at you as much as it's, instant gratification. I was not bored by it. And that's why it gets the few points in my score. It's at 3.5. But
Not much.
yeah, and I'll say it saved the best, in my opinion, the best action sequence for last. I like the final duel of dragons. I like seeing Saphira injured. And I didn't get to mention this in the plot, but I do think Ed Spaliers gives, like, his one good standout performing moment here when he, reaches Saphira after she's been bitten, and he's like, he basically collapses on top of her. I was like, okay, finally, something from this doofus that I can believe. Like, okay, good. You're showing some sort of emotion for something.
I can echo that sentiment.
Yes, and I was like, okay, good. Finally. And that's why the ending was, like, slightly redeeming. It was nowhere near enough to save this movie, only to give it a less bad score than I was already aiming for. And again, didn't read the book, so this was just a completely new experience for me. And as a fantasy film, it definitely doesn't hold up to the Harry Potters or the Lord of the Ringses or even the Narnias. In fact, I actually got the most... This is like a failed Narnia movie, in my opinion, because there's a lot of things that Narnia does. The aesthetic is very similar, where it's like this kind of almost an off-brand fantasy where it's, they've got a lot of money behind it, but it doesn't quite have an aesthetic to call its own. But Narnia had emotion behind it, and it established its younger actors in a more convincing way, and they had character arcs that
relationships.
Relationships that made more sense and were believable, even though they had not a lot of screen time. It did a lot with a little. And this one just... This is such a baffling movie because it's 2 hours long, yet I feel like every scene is so short and just there's no development whatsoever. I'm like, how is this movie 2 hours? It feels like an hour 15 minutes. like which is a testament to the pacing, maybe. But
Had to be.
like,
And it's
just-
much crucial things that they cut out. Why is it this long? And
Yeah,
nothing
exactly.
happened.
It feels like a really short movie that doesn't do anything with its characters, but whatever. Anyway, 3.5. I stick with that. It's fine.
All right. Next up, Irina with a 5.
I think there's enough in this film that warrants a 5 for me, where there are good scenes where I enjoy it visually. The music doesn't match up.
Not at all.
I know a lot of these things I'm going to say we've kind of mentioned before, but I'm going to go back to the fact that they don't know how to tease. There's a reason why Game of Thrones was so effective, and I realize that is a series, a TV show where you can build that up, but the payoff when her dragons are finally fully formed and you get to see them wreak havoc upon, these cities and everything,
so
you're
cool.
like, yes, this is the moment I was waiting for and I'm getting it.
Yep.
This doesn't give me that. And,
Not at all.
Another thing that I have to say is, as a word of advice to anyone that wants to do an adaptation of a book, and I heard this from, I think, some of the design team and the creative team for Lord of the Rings, was that they realize they can't do everything accurately to the book, but you have to keep the spirit of the writer. And that's because that's why it's effective. That's why people love it. And because you can see the heart and you can feel their voice through it. And that's why Lord of the Rings and Narnia and all of these fantasy films that we've talked about are so well received, is because even though there are technical details that aren't true, it still captured that world and what you love about it. And this ignored all of that. So I'm going to stick with 5 and not talk too much about it. But the last thing I will say is that even though the ones of us that haven't read the books, like we don't know what we're missing, we still have the same issues that you guys that have had the history of reading it have. So that means that we are both picking up on the same issues, which I'm assuming most people that watched this movie picked up on as well.
Well, that's somewhat reassuring, I suppose. And
Yeah.
it's like they grabbed this book off the shelf, analyzed the cover art, opened up and read the inside flap, and made a movie based on that.
Spark notes.
Yeah, they're like, oh, here's the names that we have to include.
I think this came out with I feel like there was a flurry of fantasy films because they felt, oh yeah, fantasy is in now.
Ooh.
And then they just kind of grabbed whatever young adult fiction was popular and decided, yeah, we'll just do some kind of half-assed attempt at having that
Unfortunately
made.
for them, fantasy wasn't in. Good stories were just in.
Yeah,
I'll say this, better than the last Airbender movie.
No, that is
High
true.
bar.
Yeah.
That
High
is true.
bar. All right.
All right, last one.
You know, I think it's appropriate that Nick is the last one on this. It is very apropos. So
Apropos, wow, you just vibing with that word today. Huh?
yeah, that's a David word.
Apropos.
So Nick with a 6.0.
All right.
All right. Well, first of all, let me say I feel like that this entire movie can be summed up with some of Arya's last words. Only yesterday you were a farm boy. Today you are a hero. I'll be waiting for tomorrow.
Yep.
It did feel like everything passed in that sequence of time.
I feel like even before you guys started talking, I knew I wanted to lower my score. Just
Fair.
watching the movie on the screen behind us, and it just. I think I gave it a 6 originally because off the top of my head, as I was watching it the first time again today, I saw it hitting points like if a teacher had given out a rubric, it would have hit the points that would get you a passing grade, but not done anything to get you higher than that. And so I felt like 6 is passable. It's not going to transfer to another school, but it's going to get you the grade you need to get out of college. Going back and watching this now, there's so many instances where there are just mistakes that were made. Like when you see Saphira's armor for the first time, it looks so cool. And then all of a sudden she's wearing different armor. Like if you look, the armor they introduce you to and say they worked all through the night on this is different than the armor she actually wears during the battle.
Yeah.
So they have a whole bunch of moments in this where just things don't connect. And I would expect more from a visual effects director or a visual effects supervisor for an adaptation of a book. You get someone like that to properly bring this world to life, and he brought Saphira to life, and that felt about it. I barely got a glimpse of anything else from the book that I wanted to see, and I think, like we said before, it just wasn't a faithful adaptation to the spirit of it. One thing that one of my favorite writers, Aaron Sorkin, says is that he doesn't try to make still pictures. He doesn't take a picture with the camera. He paints a painting. It doesn't matter if the courtroom he's filming in is the exact same size as the courtroom in real life of the movie he's like making, It just has to get the point across.
Yeah.
This doesn't even do that. Peter Jackson in Lord of the Rings, it's hard, he realizes that it's hard to show Gollum fall and trip over something into Mount Doom like in the books. It's hard to just put that on screen and get the same effect that Tolkien had when he's writing about fate and destiny. And you're getting this whole description of why this is happening. Whereas if you just film that, oh, Gollum fell, we're probably going to laugh as he falls in. So instead, he has to find a way to make Gollum fall in that is not going to just, or have Frodo push him in and they fight over it, and you have to still show that Frodo's, under the influence of the ring, and he can't climb back up until the ring's destroyed. So he manages to make a brief scene into a very emotional scene of Frodo finally not, like, he's brought the ring as far as he can, and now he's finally let loose from the influence. So that's a good example of staying true to the source material, even if you don't stay true. Yeah. Even if you don't stay true to the exact scenes and sequence of events. There's no moment of that in this. Like, everything, I don't know. It just,
they defecated on the spirit.
Exactly. Yes. And one of the reasons I'm dropping it by another half point is because of all the moments like the armor where things just don't match. Another half point is because it just was a terrible adaptation.
Yeah.
And it could have done so much better. And I did my best to not look at this as what it could have been. But when it's an adaptation, you expect there to be something there. And I want to drop it even more because, as AJ was saying, this going back and bringing me back through the book, because the last time I read this was before the movie came out. And I was so excited for it. And now that I'm thinking about it, this movie is the reason I didn't read the second book.
I was about to ask that because I felt that after the movie came out, I never heard anything about the books ever again from anyone.
I really hope these movies didn't kill the author's credibility.
Well, I don't think they did. He had 4 books.
He, not to get too much more nitty gritty that's extraneous. I mean, Pauline was dedicated. Like I said, he's dedicated to his own world and his fans. And he was obviously left out of the creative decision making of this movie, which within, say, Harry Potter, like they at least consult with J.K. Rowling, and it's kind of hard to make an adaptation of a contemporary book.
Right.
Sometimes they do it a year later. And this one, I think Pauline was young. He made a decision. Yeah, let's capitalize on this and turn this first book around, even without having faith in the studio and that kind of thing. But at least consult the author. Like, I understand that, like Alan Moore, like you're probably not going to get along with Alan Moore.
Yeah.
If you're adapting his stuff.
He just hates everything.
He does.
But I just, I'm beating a dead horse. Like, there's reasonable room for deviation on adapting a book. This was the opposite direction.
Yeah. I feel like people are starting to finally learn that if you're going to adapt something that has a whole huge swath of fans,
don't tick them off.
It's smarter to just do it like it was in the book or comic book or video game. What say you?
Especially as the theme of our podcast, if you're intending a franchise.
Yes.
Do not cut absolutely crucial elements of the story and characters that are pivotal in the later chapters.
I'm still looking forward to hearing that.
Yeah. So, Nick, would you like to finish your...
and I know I'm going to get into a little bit of this later when we talk about the franchise, but as a film, I'm kind of glad that it's been so long since I've seen since I've read the book, because I can give this a little bit of a higher score. I feel like as a one-off movie, not connected to the book at all, it does its job to kind of entertain me, and it's a fine movie, and I don't think it would ever deserve a sequel. I just enjoyed it for what it was. Going back and hearing all this again is why I'm dropping my score. So I'm going to drop it 0.5 point for inconsistencies, another 0.5 point for being a terrible adaptation, and for killing a young boy's dreams of reading more of Christopher Paolini's work, which I kind of want to go back and read now. So
you should.
5 overall.
5.
Hey, we ended the same score.
I mean, we have a contemporary example, somewhat similar. We have Game of Thrones, which was hugely successful. And there's an argument to be made that once the
The books
plot
ended. Yeah.
surpassed the actual written events of the books, that's when things started falling off. And I guess we have kind of a similar deviation of story here.
I would say even despite the Game of Thrones ending up in a more questionable area than it was before, I was much more, the direction on Game of Thrones was much more competent than it was in
right.
Eragon.
And again, it's a serial format. You have more time to develop characters, but here they didn't try. They didn't start off on a good foot to develop characters.
Yeah.
So,
all right, AJ, you want to crunch those numbers for us?
all right. Let's run some numbers here. So I'm doing a couple of iterations. So with our normal crew, including Noah, we have an average of 3.9.
Okay.
And including Nick, we have a 4.1. So with that 3.9, that ties League of Extraordinary Gentlemen for third to last place.
That seems about
I
right.
can't believe that these are that low, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
And then with Nick's score, that bumps it over a 4, which is where Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Men Tell No Tales is at.
Which I would say Dead Men Tell No Tales is better. Personally.
no,
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
understand that.
I agree. I actually think this would fall below both of those, like League of Extraordinary that movie for me.
Yeah.
No,
I actually would agree.
when was the last time you watched League?
I watched it around the time you guys did the podcast.
Okay,
for it.
okay.
Yeah. All right.
That one at least has more zany fun to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And it didn't actively insult something that was already established.
I would say
Well,
the
it did
visual
some,
effects
but-
are better in Aragon, though.
Yeah, for the dragon at least.
Yeah,
They-
exactly.
that's the only one they
Yeah.
tried on, though.
Now, one little fact that you may not have known, also that whether or not we need to bring it up, is that this is the last VHS movie to ever be made.
That is crazy.
Ooh,
That's so weird to me. Like, I don't remember.
Video star.
Andy doesn't sing very often.
So basically, what we're trying to say is Aragon killed the VHS.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're like,
It broke
whoa, we're not selling any of this.
Let's move on to critics. On the Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has a 16% with an audience score of 47%. So almost 50% of audiences would give this a positive ranking.
Almost like Nick and Irina and I.
Yeah.
Yeah. On Metacritic, it has a 38, which is actually a little higher than I thought it was.
Yeah.
That's 2 points away from being mixed and or average. With an audience score of 3.5. So for once, the audience score is lower than the critics in this case, which usually it's the other way.
That's
They all read the
strange. I
book.
wouldn't expect it to be that.
Critics
Yeah.
didn't read the book, audience did.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you
exactly.
go.
Yeah,
And
and-
CGI.
Yep, and on IMDb, this movie has a 5.1, which I would consider negative. That sounds more like in the middle, but with IMDb, the range is kind of like, you don't get many reviews that are actually under 5 on IMDb. They're usually like 5 to 8.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
usually they're like 7 on average.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you go to IMDb, it's almost always like 7 something. So yeah, that rounds out the critics. I would say mostly negative with a few outliers in the kind of mixed range. So yeah, let's move on to box office. This movie released on December 13th in 2006, which is actually kind of like later than I thought it was. I thought it was even older than that, but it was 2006.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. It had a budget of $100 million, and it released against The Pursuit of Happiness and Charlotte's Web.
I watched both those
Oh
movies.
gosh, I forgot they did
I
Charlotte's
saw
Web.
both of those in theaters, but not Aragon.
And I think
Yeah.
the second weekend was Night at the Museum.
Yeah, it might have been.
What?
Yeah,
The same weekend?
the second weekend.
I mean,
of
so
this
I
movie.
saw literally every other movie that came out this year except
Yeah.
for Aragon.
So with that knowledge, let's do a worldwide box office prediction here. We're going to start with our guest here, Nick. What do you think? Worldwide.
Unless you know already.
Because I know already, I'm just going to guess that it's the tickets that we paid for in our theater and no one else saw it. So we'll go with like $30.
$30.
I love it.
AJ.
So I know this actually draw the crowd because of the book. I mean, the book was really popular at the time it came out. I picked it up at a Scholastic book fair. Like, I have distinct memories
Oh,
of
Scholastic Book Fair.
buying this book. So I know it drew a crowd opening weekend, and so I know it at least doubled its budget. So let's say 215.
215? All right. Irina.
Mentioning Scholastic Book Fair was a better nostalgia trip than watching this movie.
Sure was.
Do 180.
180.
I'm
David.
gonna take a cool 250.
All right. David, you didn't cheat, did you?
No, I legitimately didn't.
All right, it was $250 million.
On the money?
Dang, nice.
On the money.
Okay.
On the
Let's
money.
go.
How much domestic though?
Let's go where?
$75 million domestically.
Yellowstone.
I was hoping David would.
Oh yeah, you were hoping.
I was
Yeah,
going
so
2 for 2.
yeah, so the movie grossed $250 million worldwide, $75 million domestically, and its opening weekend was $23 million, and it was second to The Pursuit of Happiness.
Which how do
Just
you
so
go
know.
second to a blockbuster film like this, or
I know.
second to Pursuit
I
of
know.
Happiness?
It did at least,
CGI.
to its credit, it tripled its budget. That could also be attributed to the fact that it
didn't?
released during the Christmas season, which movies... Yeah, it did.
He's rounding up.
No, in domestically. It tripled it.
Okay.
Sorry, it tripled its opening, not its budget. Sorry. Sorry.
I was a little confused.
Yeah. But yeah, it actually performed pretty well. If this movie had gotten much better reviews, it would have gotten a sequel.
Yeah.
I genuinely think that.
And I actually think this is one of the reasons, what was it, AJ or I forget who was talking about when a franchise does not win over the fans of the original material, then it's not going to do well. Like look at Marvel, they play to their fans first, and then they play to the general audience. Like if you don't win over the people that are going to be talking about this, this franchise is not going to go anywhere. And even though this made a pretty good amount of money overseas, I feel like the main reason it doesn't get a sequel is because the fans absolutely hated it.
Yeah.
And they knew they weren't going to get them back
I'm
for the
still
sequel.
waiting on my Hulk 2, okay?
So this is
Ragnarok.
this is one of those rare cases when money doesn't talk, because in this case, it did make enough money to justify a sequel, but critics and audiences, especially audiences, were so upset with this movie that I think it just killed any franchise potential. It's like no one's going to show up for this because no one liked it. They read the writing on the wall, and it was, and as what has been alluded to, which I don't even know yet, is that it just completely drops, big plot points from the story. But yeah, I think they read the writing on the wall with this one, and they kind of, as AJ put it, shot themselves in the foot with a 12-gauge shotgun by, leaving out crucial bits of the story. I'm gonna let you two divulge that information.
How
I
are
stopped reading
VHS
after this,
sales,
so I
though?
can't help you there.
Okay, that's true. That's right. So AJ, what was it with this movie that just killed any potential for sequels? That was what part of the story did they completely change?
I mean, we've already gone over some spoilers. I'm not going to be nitty gritty because we're going on a lot, but some of the things that further the development of Saphira and Eragon just didn't happen in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like Obi-Wan never sacrificed himself to Darth Vader and became, one with the Force. Like, I'll let you read the books, and I think these books deserve to be read. It's a mass appealing book. It's fantasy that's accessible to the average person, and it's an entertaining story. And there's lessons to be learned about identity and finding yourself, and that's a common thing for YA stuff. But I don't know. I'll leave it at that. Just I don't want to get too specific and lose people who don't know what we're talking about. There are several things that come up later in. Well, okay, I'll say one thing. Dwarves. No dwarves in this movie at all. They are very critical to the storyline of the rest of the books and things like that.
Did we get elves?
Yeah, Arya's an elf.
No, we got an elf. Did we get elves?
Yes,
With a
yeah.
plural.
And so there is somewhat of a love story between Arya and Eragon that was fairly butchered in this. Galbatorix was a 2-line character in this, and it just, if you don't start off on the right foot of a character development in the first book, their origin story, like how are you going to do that throughout 3 more books?
Yeah.
Because that's the whole inheritance cycle. It's the identity of who you were, who your parentage is, your lineage and that kind of thing, where you came from, how you fit into the world. Fantasy, a lot of it is world building and lore building and stuff like that. We didn't get any prologue, as you said earlier. So yeah, it's hard to make a cohesive story based on the following books without some crucial elements they completely omitted in this story. I know Paolini, like I said, he didn't have much input on this, and he immediately expressed regret for selling the rights immediately. I know, like Nick mentioned, that he and his sister are intent on, if it ever is remade, they're going to be, directly involved in it, as well as some of the books he's involved in now. So, but yeah, it's hard to make a franchise. Let's say Lord of the Rings, since we're making those comparisons. Like, say Gollum doesn't exist. Like, just completely skip over like Bilbo finding the ring.
How the
just a random
hell?
hobbit instead of the creature.
Or
that he is.
they rode the eagles to Mount Doom. Like the story doesn't exist.
Boom, story fixed.
Yeah.
I would imagine they were anticipating just further butchering the story and adding in whatever they felt like could.
I don't know.
This movie feels like what I've heard Lord of the Rings was supposed to be like when Harvey Weinstein was involved.
Yeah.
Ugh. A one film version, which is impossible, by the way.
I do have one other. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I do have one other thing to say on the franchise aspect that. No, I forgot it.
No.
Disney owns the rights since they bought Fox.
That's true.
Ooh.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, it could happen in the future.
That reminds me. That's what I was going to say. I think the one thing that I will give them credit for is they made the kind of risks that Marvel made, only it didn't work.
They took the kind of risks.
Yeah, they took the risk of getting a director who was not so well established, but had done some really great work in the past. They got newer writers. They got newer actors. They found people who had some sort of promise and could have made something really great. And I feel like with Marvel, that's worked. And then they have a couple of established actors in background roles. Like you have Jeff Bridges as the villain, or you have, William Hurt as the antagonist to the Hulk, or you have someone who everyone recognizes in the background.
Yeah.
And that worked with Marvel. For some reason, it didn't work here. And I think one thing that was missing was some sort of human connection of someone who actually liked the source material and was willing to go spend a weekend at someone's house and talk about the cool things they can do with this property.
Yeah. So while we definitely won't be getting a sequel to this movie, which, good, we don't want a sequel to this movie. There has been talks, according to Paolini, of a potential reboot of the franchise.
He says there are inklings in Hollywood.
Yes. So he was, when asked if Eragon would be rebooted or continued, he has said, and this is a quote, "If I knew, I'd tell you. Let's just say there have been a few inklings of interest in Hollywood, but Hollywood being Hollywood, it could be a long time before we get a reboot. Or it could happen tomorrow." So which means, like, they probably call him up, and he's like, okay, get back to me. And then, long wait. Who knows?
Someone could come out of nowhere.
Yeah. The thing is, I think this could be a successful franchise. I would like to see the slightly darker version of what we got. A little more detail with the characters. Just more character progression and development. Just, I don't know. You could do this. You could realize this in a cool way.
I'm going to take the nose.
You can have a valuable... You can. Yeah, I mean, that's always the go-to answer, and it's not wrong.
It doesn't even have to be a TV show.
But,
it could be a movie. You just need people that know what they're doing.
You can have... It needs to be longer than an hour, 43 minutes.
Well, you have to have value in a story beyond the archetypes. Mm-hmm. Like, we've all seen fantasy archetypes before, and we compare this... and it is somewhat derivative of his predecessors. I mean, but it still, like, has a meaningful, like, message.
Yeah.
And so you have to get the characters right. You have to get the relationships right.
Yeah.
And this movie did not have that at all.
Yeah. Agreed. With that said, that concludes our Eragon episode. And this is the first of our Dragons and Dragon Riders series. Next week, we'll be talking about Reign of Fire.
Not Jeremy Irons' other dragon movie?
Not Dungeons and Dragons. Who knows? Maybe we'll talk about that. It could be
We're going to play Dungeons and Dragons?
Drinks as a requirement for that one. All right. Until then, we'll see y'all.
But even then, I expected someone a little more